Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, or UNN, and we are the official news channel for CARE, which stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And you will be hearing a lot more about CARE and all the various ways we intend to help humanity in the very near future. But for our news, we discuss what we call the real news. There's a lot of information out there through mainstream media, if you're still watching that, or perhaps alternative media, and it's really hard to know who to trust. So we think it's important that you really have a good understanding of what's happening locally in your area, in your region, as well as what's happening in the world, and we even take it a step beyond that. And we say what we call the multiverse. So that's all dimensions, all planes of existence, the universe, everything all wrapped into one. And we have a newscast that comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday through our website at unitednetwork.earth. We also release those newscasts 1 week later, so 1 week after they're released on our app and through our website. They do come out on YouTube and Rumble. So if you don't have a membership, you can access the news just a little bit later. And for the stories that I'm talking about today, you can access this coming week. So if you hear something you really like and you want to learn more about it from today's podcast episode, then this coming week you can go back and actually watch the newscast. So what we do on this podcast for the rundown, it's basically a week in review. So I take a look at all the stories that we covered this past week and give you highlights. It's a great way to catch up on stories you may have missed, or if you want to share UNN with someone else who doesn't have a membership, you can send them this podcast episode if they like podcasts. You can also send them the links to our YouTube channel, and they can access the information that way. We cover local stories as told through the eyes of our field messengers. We talk about the new Earth and where our planet is going and some of the incredible things that people are already doing, because not everything is just based on having money. You can do amazing things now and change the planet and change your reality and the reality of others, right? We're all one here. And so we share those type of stories. We talk about what is happening in various regions of the world, minus what governments are doing. We're not really interested in what governments are doing. Governments are puppets, but we want to know what is really happening and who's giving the orders and what are they saying. And a lot of that is talked about in what we call our World Situation Report. So Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian comes on the news and she'll give us an update. And I'll tell you what, a lot of stuff we talked about this week is very high level stuff. And Kim talked a lot directly to the deep state, which she does, on a regular basis. But some of these things that she talks about, these are programs that, I'm sure you've never heard of before. And it can be a lot button. So you can watch the news, over and over again if you need to and get all that content. And then obviously the wrap up with this podcast, right? So we talk about a lot of different things, and we know what we're talking about because we do have access to the highest security clearance on the planet. It's not just based on countries and militaries. There is security for the entire planet, and that's what we tap into. It used to be called the Alpha system. Now we're calling it the Light system. So the information that we give on here may be very surprising. It may seem a little bit out there. You may feel like, you're watching an episode of Star Trek or something like that. But I encourage you guys to stick with us. Always think critically. Always ask questions. Because that's kind of how we got into this mess. We just believed everything that people were telling us, and there were a lot of programs out there to basically mind control us. But it's time for us to think independently now about this information. And a lot of it's going to be new because we've been lied to for a very long time. Okay, announcements before we get started. The only thing I wanted to say is thank you for all of you guys that watch and check out our newscasts on a regular basis. This week was a little crazy for both Kim and I. I was doing some additional traveling, so I was literally on the road. I left right after Monday's newscast and the whole week. So for Wednesday and Friday's newscast, I was on the road. staying in 2 different hotels for Wednesday's news and Friday's news. You have to figure out lighting and everything. And, I do all of this myself. And, Mike obviously handles the production side of it. But, if I'm on the road, I handle my audio, my lighting, my everything, making sure you have internet connection. There's just a lot to consider. So if things looked a little bit different than normal, that's what was going on this past week. But thank you guys for bearing with us and allowing us to, at least me, to do some additional things with my family. It's very special. So I appreciate that. All right. So coming up in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about our field messenger reports. We have reports this week from Romania, Canada, Spain, Uganda, the U.S., as well as the U.K. In our New Earth, so these are stories that really focus on where we're going with our planet. I also like to talk about what I call our amazing superhuman skills that we have that we forgot about. And this section of the news is really meant to uplift and support you. So in this week's news, we talked about healing past lives as well as lives from ancestors, which can, kind of get in the mix there. And a lot of people are concerned about that. So we address that. We talk about something called brainwave entrainment. So this is going into the different levels of your brainwave, the different status, if you will. So if you're in Theta, or if you're in alpha or gamma, there is actually technology to help train your brain to go into those states perhaps more effectively so that you can naturally do this on your own later on. Sometimes if you don't know what a state feels like, it may be harder to access and you may have a lot of questions. Am I in Theta? Am I not in Theta? So we have some tech to talk about that can help you with that. And then we are also talking about, this is a lovely story. So speaking of Theta, we have a Theta healing practitioner, Michelle, that comes on the news and chats with us about going into Theta. And she talks about healing multiple sclerosis, her own multiple sclerosis. So she was part of a group of people that helped her do that. And she just shares her own story, which obviously is very encouraging and uplifting. And then in our regional news, these are, the stories that we talk about on the news from all around the world. And we have about 15 or so stories in each newscast. So I gather together, I kind of look for common denominators. What are some of the common topics that we're talking about? So this week we have some stories in health and medical. We have stories about shopping and commerce, as well as data and technology. And then in our world situation report, we've got some sound bites from Kim. She is talking about the SEAL agreement. SEAL as in like seal of approval, SEAL. And this relates to a being called Artemis, which is also called the Red Queen. And the reason we're talking about this now, that being is no longer around, but we're talking about this because some of the things that the deep state is doing is tapping into Artemis's responsibilities that she had while she was controlling things on this planet. So we're going to talk about that agreement and the contract that Artemis had, which is now expired, which is why what the deep state is doing is not working. We're also going to talk about who's really giving orders right now and who are people listening to. Like when you look at the Q clock and some of these other things out there that, people are really hoping are true, which aren't true. Where are these things coming from? Are they just making this up? As it turns out, there are basically 3 men that people were taking orders from. And it's not even really 3 men because some are gone. It's a bit of a mess, but we need to know who the people who think they're in charge on this planet, who they're actually taking orders from. And we're also going to talk about fragmented dark consciousness. So for the beings that ruled on this planet for a long time and had agreements set in place, which we'll talk about, to rule on this planet, they're gone. They've been sent back to Source, to God. But their consciousness is fragmented in a way that they can exist in multiple planes and densities, even if it's just a small piece of their consciousness. So that has been causing problems for us, and it's something that Kim has been tackling, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about it. So without further ado, let's get down to this. Today is July 13th, 2024. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Okay, we're going to kick things off with our field messenger reports, and our reports from our field messengers are so important. They are what UNN is all about. We don't believe that you have to go to journalism school, which I myself did, and be taught by, various networks on how to report and then, carry over their narrative. We don't think that that is a good way of reconnecting with each other, learning about what's happening in our very own communities. We have cell phones now, we have cameras and videos and things like that that can capture exactly what's going on. We just need you, the people, to show us. And that's what our Field Messenger program is all about. So if you want more information about that, because we would love to get your reports, you can go to our website at unitednetwork.earth and search under Field Messengers and learn more about it. You don't have to have any experience. You just have to have a need to want to take your power back. That's what we're doing here, right? We're communicating with one another as opposed to everything going through these gatekeepers. And that's what's been going on for pretty much ever, for the history of media. All right, so let's talk about our Field Messenger reports. We have a couple in each newscast. Starting on Monday, we have Monica from Romania. She's telling us a little bit more about ecotourism in that area. She explores the Danube Delta Museum, which is all based on ecotourism. So we learn more about the delta's formation, its biodiversity, the fishing practices, because this is really more about learning how our planet operates, right? And deltas, where rivers come together, are a big part of that. So she shares with us what that looks like in Romania. And then Annette from Canada visits a small town called Hope. That's in British Columbia. There is a charming town, that's what Hope is, with an impressive group of chainsaw carvings. So I don't know if you've ever operated chainsaw. I'm lucky if I can cut something in half with a chainsaw. So the fact that there are people out there that are creating amazing art and using it as a sculpting tool, I find to be very impressive. So Annette shows us all the beautiful works of art in the Hope community that were made with chainsaws. So again, just getting to know our communities a little bit better. And then on Wednesday, we have Emma. Emma's in Spain, in Fuerteventura. Emma is a regular, I was going to say reporter, field messenger for us. She's been doing a lot of stories, which is great. She updates on I'll call it a program. Free plants and trees are distributed during this celebration. They call it World Environment Day. And this is an initiative that encourages people to create gardens. And particularly in the gardens, they would love to have different flora and fauna from the islands. So again, about replenishing our planet. I love the fact that this is driven by the government. You rarely see that, right? And then in eastern Uganda, Mwanda Michael does a story about their community and how they are handling their farming. So they grow a lot of bananas and pineapples. Their diet is very rich in, both of those, fruits, ingredients, if you will. And he shows us how they do something called mixed farming, where they're growing those fruit together. And this is helping provide both income and food security for people in the area. And then on Friday, we have a couple of stories. So Addison, who happens to be my daughter, one of my twin girls, she does a story about a strawberry festival that's in our area in Southern California. Thousands of people come, and we went there with our family. And I said, hey, do you want to do a field messenger report? I'm all about getting, the young kids involved in this as well. And she said, sure. So we just show you some of the vendors, and there was live entertainment. And it's really about the history of strawberries in the area. The area isn't really well known for strawberries now, but it was a very important part of the culture. And who doesn't like strawberries and, yummy food and, strawberries on everything from bibs to collars for your dog and t-shirts and purses, everything was strawberry. And then we also had a report from Simone in the UK, and she gives us a tour of a place called the Isabella Plantation. It is a very enchanting place. It's, I'll call it a retreat. It has vibrant flora, has abundant wildlife. Again, this is just getting to know our planet a little bit better, and these little nooks and places that people haven't heard about. You can just see beautiful flowers in bloom, and it gives us an appreciation for our planet and where we live and its rich biodiversity. All right, let's talk about the new Earth. So this is a segment of our news where we want to encourage and support you and uplift you because people are already doing incredible things on this planet. It doesn't get reported on a lot, but that's why it's important to share these stories as much as possible. So we always kick things off with a short interview, about 5 minutes or less, and we have some people come on the news to share their perspective on things. And on Monday, we had Carrie Kay, which you might be familiar with. Carrie is a spiritual teacher. She has her own YouTube channel, and she's been on our news quite a bit. She talks a little bit about some misconceptions when it comes to healing past lives, as well as healing karma from ancestors. And you may have looked into this before. It can be a little overwhelming. Because if you think about how many past lives, how many ancestors do you have, and you're taking on all of that karma as a result, that's a lot for anybody to take on. But Carrie's message is more about understanding that it's easier than you think. So you kind of have to get out of your brain a little bit because everything is happening in the now. We think about things happening in the past, we think about things happening in the future, but really everything is in the now, which makes it easier. You don't have to think about, oh, I got to go back in the, past. I got to find past this and, past whatever relatives and, who did this and who did that. That's not what it's about. Everything is happening now. So she talks a little bit more about that and hopefully gives some relief for people that are like, how do I do this? How do I resolve this? Then on Wednesday, we had Zenka Caro on the news. She is from LightNet. And that is I love what they're doing over there. So they have different, I'll call them courses. She calls them experiences. Think of them as like online classes and not necessarily classes you got to attend every week, but classes that train you to be able to do different things, remember who you really are and the amazing superhuman capabilities that you have. So Zenka in this segment talks about brainwave entrainment. So when we think about our brain waves and the different states, you've got alpha, you've got beta, delta, gamma, theta. We talk a lot about theta because that's the connection to our creator. So it depends, what you're able to do really depends on the state of your brain waves. And there is technology out there to help you access these different stages of brain waves that Zenka tells us about. She actually shows us too. She's got some funny looking things on her head. It's kind of a entertaining segment, I should say. And I'm not saying that you have to have this in order to go into those stages. And we talk about this in the segment. It's not about becoming reliant on technology. I kind of view this the same way I view med beds. Yeah, med beds exist, but if we're just focused on the technology, then we are not giving ourselves credit for how incredible we are naturally and our bodies are naturally. And remember how to do that. You may not feel as confident, right? You may be like, am I really in theta? Am I not in theta? You may question a lot of things. So I like the idea of using this kind of technology to help you better remember what these things feel like so you can access them on your own. And then on Friday, we had Michelle Ann Phillips on the news. She is a theta healing practitioner, and she talks about her process of being able to heal her multiple sclerosis, which was very painful for her. And she was in bed, I think she said, for 7 years. It was a crazy amount of time, very difficult, very painful for her. And that was healed using theta. And so she shares her beautiful story. Here's another story you're sure to love. So in New Jersey, a guy by the name of Larry Abrams created something called Book Smiles. Okay, so this is his project after learning students in his community had trouble reading. Many didn't have books at home, so he created one of the largest book banks in the U.S., mainly asking for donations. So this is something, guys, I love sharing these stories because this is something, he wasn't waiting on funding. He wasn't waiting for someone to drop a big check in his lap. He went around asking for donations. And for the first 6 years, that's how long the program's been around, he has given away more than 2 million books. And that equates to about 70,000 books locally each month. So it's just another testament of how powerful we can be when we're passionate about something and we just go for it. Here's another interesting story. So there is a fashion library in Amsterdam. It's called Lena, like the woman's name, Lena. And it's basically a big shared wardrobe where you can rent clothes, and that includes both used and new clothes. And this is a commitment to reducing textile waste and promoting sustainable fashion alternatives. The clothes are all separated by brand and style, so it's very organized. And the tags show the price. So sometimes it's to rent it outright for a period of time. Sometimes it's to purchase it. Sometimes there's a daily cost. It's all dependent on how often you borrow the clothes. And right now they have more than 6,000 members and growing. And our final story as part of the New Earth is about 500 extra steps. Have you ever thought about 500 steps and what that could do in your daily exercise routine? So research indicates seniors, so in this situation, seniors are older than 70, according to this research, can lower the risk of heart issues by taking an extra 500 steps each day. So people who walk 4,500 steps daily are 77% less likely to have heart problems. Now, on average, seniors walk 3,500 steps daily, so by adding those extra 500 steps, it simply keeps them more active. All right, now it's time for our regional news. So we have a bunch of regional stories that we run in each of our newscasts. So I like to look for common denominators, right? What are some of the common topics that we have been talking about this past week? So I've got 3 different categories for you. The first is health and medical. Then we've got shopping and commerce, and a little bit about data and technology, which my daughter told me yesterday, Mom, it's not data, it's data. I don't think I'm ever going to switch. I think I'm always going to say data. All right, so let's start with health and medical. So in Germany, the market for legal cannabis is facing challenges due to their complex regulations. Registered cannabis clubs are being restricted by membership, so you have to have a membership in order to partake of the inventory. They're also being restricted by growing spaces and by production estimates. Authorities require any surplus to be destroyed, and only members can participate in cultivation activities. Spot checks by officials are also regular, and also these clubs cannot advertise. So regardless of how you feel about marijuana, there are really good things that can come from the plant itself, okay? So you have marijuana, you have cannabis, different products that can come from that, medicinal products. I've actually used some things like that in the past to take care of like some topical skin issues, and it's worked really well. Plus you have hemp that you can make hempcrete from, which is a substitute for concrete, much better for the environment. You can make clothes out of hemp. So I'm not surprised that the government is going above and beyond trying to restrict this, because it could definitely interfere with other sectors like cotton and, a whole bunch of different industries that may not want to be messed with. All right. We also have a story about private U.S. insurance firms running Medicare Advantage programs and overcharging the federal government by billions of dollars. And they do this by exaggerating patient illnesses. So insurers receive higher payments for treating patients with more severe conditions. An analysis between the years of 2018 and 2021 shows insurers added questionable conditions to patient charts, even when treatment wasn't provided. United Health, just to name one, was the worst offender, earning $8.7 billion in 2021 from these types of diagnosis. Patients are usually unaware of these false diagnoses, which could lead to incorrect medical records and compromised care. Scientists have detected toxic metals in tampons, posing serious risks to women. A recent study tested 30 tampons from 14 brands, finding harmful metals like arsenic, lead, and mercury in all of them. Now, between 52% and 86% of American women use tampons. The concern here is that those metals can be absorbed directly into the body, increasing their risk for dementia, cancer, infertility, and diabetes. We also have a story out of Pakistan. So a proposed human milk bank in Pakistan has hit a setback after the withdrawal of clerical support. This bank was intended to help premature infants by providing donor milk. However, it was challenged due to concerns about maintaining strict religious guidelines. Critics argue that kinship bonds in Islam forbid marriage between children fed by the same woman, and this complicates the milk bank's feasibility. However, on the other side, health experts emphasize that human milk is needed to prevent severe infections in premature babies, and formula milk is not an adequate substitute. All right, moving on to shopping and commerce. So European law enforcement have uncovered exploitation in the production of luxury handbags by brands like Dior and Armani. No real, surprise there, right? We know that there are knockoffs, but this is more about the brands themselves putting out things under their name and using practices that are very questionable. So they say many of the workers are illegal immigrants and they are paid as little as $2 an hour to make handbags that sell for thousands of dollars. They work in really harsh conditions, they work really long hours, and some of them even sleep in the workshops. They also say subcontractors are employing unauthorized Chinese migrants off the books, and they are also ignoring health and safety regulations. In Myanmar, there are shop owners who are trying to do the right thing and they're getting slapped for it big time. In fact, they're getting jail time. So shop owners in Myanmar are being jailed for, get this, raising employee wages as the economic crisis deepens. So they're seeing that their employees need to be paid more. They are paying them more and they're going to jail for it. At least 10 shopkeepers have been imprisoned for boosting worker pay. All of them are facing up to 3 years in prison. And basically they are being accused by the junta, which is a military regime. They are being accused of undermining the regime by fostering perceptions of rising inflation. And the ironic thing is there no fostering perceptions. Inflation is going up. There are major cost of living crises. People aren't able to afford food and basic necessities. But obviously the people in charge don't want you to think that that's the case because that would be on them, right? That would be their problem. All right, moving on. In Singapore, they are experiencing the worst congestion at their container port since the pandemic. This is impacting global supply chains and causing shipping rates to surge. This transshipment hub, which connects more than 600 ports in 123 countries, is seeing a domino effect on neighboring ports, especially in Malaysia. Ships are being rerouted to avoid Red Sea conflicts, but those have created bottlenecks in other Asian and European ports, and this is leading to increased congestion in Singapore. The shipping crisis could result in inflationary pressure, with estimates suggesting a 0.7 point increase to global core goods inflation. And finally, let's talk about data and technology. I've got a few stories here for you. OpenAI, so artificial intelligence, OpenAI, has announced it will block users from China, and that has already started. That started July 9th. This block means Chinese developers can no longer use VPN to access U.S. tools, which is affecting their AI application development and research. This follows rising U.S.-China tensions and U.S. restrictions on exporting advanced semiconductors to China. This is a decision that has caused concern for Chinese AI companies, but on the bright side here, it also presents an opportunity for domestic companies to gain users who were previously reliant on U.S. providers. And this is an encouraging story, I feel. A group of residents in Tokyo, Japan, are attempting to block the construction of a large logistics and data center. Data/data, as my daughter would say. The residents are concerned it will harm wildlife, increase population and electricity usage, and deplete their groundwater supply. So I say this is a positive story because it's people taking notice and thinking more holistically about this center and what needs to be done, or what they say needs to be done. But what's the cost of that, right? So they have filed a petition to audit the planning process that actually approved this project, and the group is considering further legal action to halt the construction. So people taking their power back and really looking at things more holistically, I think that's always a good thing. And our final story here is about kids who are consuming way too much information through electronics and the issues that they are seeing in Australia. So according to doctors in Australia, they are reporting serious cases of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and ADHD-like symptoms that are linked to excessive screen time in children. The dependence on these devices has been compared, get this, to addictive substances like cocaine and heroin. So they're comparing this to some major drugs here. They say it can disrupt sleep, cause withdrawal from social interactions, and result in school failure. Clinical psychologists are encouraging parents to engage children in offline activities, reducing reliance on technology. All right, now it's time for our World Situation Report, highlights at least, with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. So I have some sound bites that I'm going to play for you guys. If you have a chance to go back and listen to Monday's World Situation Report, that would be the July 8th newscast. I encourage you to do so. It is a longer one. I think the total news that day was like 2.5 hours long, so Kim was probably talking for an hour and 45 minutes. It's worth going back and listening to because the first part of it is a review of how our financial system was originally set up. Most people have no idea the back end of the financial system and how money actually got into the system. So if you want a quick review of that, there are other videos that we have released online about this, but there's a quick review on that because it's important that the people that think they're in control of this planet right now, they really don't understand how things work and how money was allocated and the allocation numbers that are required in order for money to come into the system. They don't understand this whole process. Plus, a lot of things have changed. So a combination of all, not knowing how things were originally set up and then also not knowing how things have changed have led to a lot of people doing a lot of silly stuff that is not going to do anything. It's just them spinning their wheels and, kind of delaying our part, in my opinion, the way I look at it, is delaying our part of the restoration process. Even though we are still moving forward with restoration in every way we can, it's still frustrating when these people do stuff and, try to make things happen. And there's just no way it's going to work because they don't understand. So it's important to understand and have that foundation. So I encourage you guys to go back and watch this. I'm not going to play a soundbite from it. You really need, Kim grabbed her whiteboard for this anyway, so you really need a visual to go along with it. So check that out. What I do want to talk about is something called the SEAL Agreement. This is related to a being called Artemis. She's also known as the Red Queen. She is no longer around, but her agreement to be able to function in the way she did on planet Earth, and we'll talk about what that looks like, actually expired on July 5th of 2024. So these agreements are expiring in real time, guys. This was an agreement that was 3 billion years old, which is a long time. And that's because it was done during a dark age where dark beings had more control. So I want to play this soundbite from Kim. She's going to talk about this SEAL agreement and how it was connected to Artemis, because the people that are trying to push a lot of the buttons and trying to rule the financial world today are tapping into this, but they don't know what they're doing. Last week, we talked about how July 4th was a time historically when a lot of money would have gone out to do nefarious things. People were relying on this money to go out. It did not happen. So we need to break this down a little bit more and talk about the beings that were involved in all this so you understand what's happening today. Here's Kim.
Okay, so before your coven meeting would have been a meeting of what's called the parents. Now the parents were, I'm going to call them humans because they were humans, but they were genetically modified humans to the point where they were superhuman in our mind. Meaning they lived for as long as 11,000 years, 12,000 years. They would go into stasis. They would take naps, those kind of things. And these parents here were speaking on behalf of the human race. So in the past, you wouldn't call them guardians. You would call them your advocate. So they weren't for humans. They weren't against humans. They just felt like we were living in a pig pen. You know, they were almost like the farmer. And I can't disagree. We have lived in a pig pen, you know, with all the orders that are coming directly through these parents. But as it relates to alien communications, orders and instructions, that's why the parents were elected to give those orders down to the 42 covens. And then it would go on down the line to eventually you would get to the Order of the Dragon folks. You would then go to the, you would be at the Order of the Dragon underneath that. You would be at your Black Sun people and those types of things. Now, let's go above the parent's head. And we talked about a long time, not a long time ago, a few months ago, about an agreement called the SEAL. And the SEAL was what ended the war that happened 250,000 years ago. And the SEAL basically said the owners of Earth are Enki, and all us inhabitants, by the way. Enki, Marduk, Artemis, aka the Red Queen, aka the Red Queen, and then we have Lucifer, and then we have Anti-Source. So after the end of the war, these were your owners of planet Earth. Now, as owners of planet Earth, they were the I shouldn't really call them, I guess they were the beneficial owners of any trust on Earth, including the Lucis Trust, which some of these people have heard about. You might have seen it on the internet. They were the beneficial owners of all your essence, energy, consciousness, matter, frequency, you name it. They owned everything on Earth. All rare earth minerals, everything was in their name. And then anything that would come from us, the little human batteries, they also owned. Yeah. So they would collect all your energy, or your energy would go in to feed the Omega system, what was necessary to keep it running. Hence what the rest of you people know as allocation numbers. So you guys going to the deep state, meaning you guys, going to the families, trying to get some kind of a allocation of energy to go to Omega, hence to you, so then you could flip it into a debt instrument known as money, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and get quote unquote an appropriation or an allocation, which you could then do willy-nilly with whatever you wanted. And wrong again, because the only reason why these people up here would have given an allocation down to here and then eventually down to here was because you have a job to do. Meaning, this will be the year we're going to have World War III. Woo! And you guys are going to do your job. But if you thought that you were going to initiate all of these programs without any kind of an order or a direction from these people, ever, you have lost your ever-loving mind. Now, let's talk about remnants. So we know now who the owners were of planet Earth and all people underneath the seal. And everybody had a different job to do. Marduk was the controller of the current, meaning he would control which direction. And he was the force, he was the wind, if you're talking about an element, that would push the energy down to the beneficial owners. They would push the energy into Omega. They would then give appropriations, is what it was actually called. That was the term. All while at the same time giving you people, even the people at the highest levels of the deep state, all you ever got was a credit. And in order to get that credit, you would have to put something in to get it. If you were in the banking system, you would need to indebt people. You would need to issue thousands of car loans, thousands of mortgages. You would need to issue more credit to people. The reason why everybody knew the name Marduk, I mean, even on the banking level and stuff, they knew that there was something up there that actually gave the orders and what days of the year that allocations would come and all of those kinds of things. But to an extent, it was because they were doing their job in indebting people, or killing people, or altering people's karma in some way, shape, or form, making people do horrible things, whether it's through mind control or, you know, people committing quote unquote suicide by eating bad food or whatever it is, even though they're the ones putting the stuff in the food. So the control mechanism went real deep. Now, after Marduk, Enki, and Enlil were gone, to some degree, their consciousness lived on in the Omega system, the dark system. So for a time, the Omega system was still trying to act as if it still had a leader, based on the fact that it was programmed to act like them in their absence. The same thing happened with the Red Queen. And today, we're going to highlight her. So her name, her real name was Artemis.
Mm-hmm.
And to define who she was, because this is where they're trying to interact right now, is in her world, which she's not here anymore. So, but she was what I call an anti-Pleiadian. She was a lower astral being. She was a red reptilian, for lack of a better term. Really, let's just say when she was around, her and I never got along. I hated her. She hated me. We ended up at the council many times, and it always ended up with an agreement for us not to kill each other unless we violated this agreement or that kind of thing. Well, eventually she violated way too many times, and now she's gone. We don't miss her.
Right.
But if you've been around in the alternative media for a long time, you have probably heard of something called the Artemis Accords.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the NASA website, you will see a reflection of the Artemis Accords, also known in the alt media as the Jupiter Accords. Why Jupiter? I have no idea. And they basically claim that they made a deal with this lady, which they did do, to have a certain amount of access or continued access or an extension for access into level 5 of the web, also any military and intelligence systems that were in there. And that agreement was from December 2018 during the solstice, and it continued on for 3 years, which coincidentally expired in 2021. However, Artemis's agreement did not expire officially until the 5th of July of this year. So how old was Artemis's agreement, and why did she have it? Okay, so Artemis had this agreement for 3 billion years. I was going to write out all this.
Whoa.
3 billion years. Yeah. And the reason why she had this agreement is because that is the same time we went into the Dark Ages. In Vedic cosmology, they call that the Kali Yuga. So what exactly was Artemis's job? Well, she had many different jobs. She had jobs within computer systems, AI systems, access. She would have also been considered the gatekeeper for anti-source. She would have also been in charge to anyone that needed or wanted access to the causal plane. Web 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and she would have been in charge of what's called the 0 point. That existed between the Alphaverse and the Omegaverse. So she said, underneath the Dark Ages, who can come and who can go? What becomes matter? What doesn't become matter? That was this red line, so to speak. She would have the ultimate say as to what went where. Now, part of the reason for the war that happened 250,000 years ago is because this 3 billion year old agreement for this being to exist expired. And everybody that was fighting at the time, most of which were not humans, you heard about the wars of Atlantis, trauma of Mu and Lemuria, and all of these types of things that you hear about on the internet. This is the source of it all. That's the war, where they quote unquote say that they lost Atlantis. Atlantis, to repeat myself, is Atlantis was full of anti-Pleiadians, negative beings. The Atlantis was a ship which came in through a portal at the direction of the Red Queen because she was not going to lose her agreement to someone else. The war went on for a long time, or quite a while, and they finally settled on the seal, which means that Artemis at that time retained her agreement to be the gatekeeper again for another 250,000 years. So the agreement that expired on the new moon on the 5th of July, because everything was done, moon cycles and this and that, even with those people, 2024. Now, these people were crazy enough to think, because they had an agreement with her before, that she was going to come and then maybe be a world war. I don't know what they were thinking. And that she was going to then re-up their agreement. When her agreement was renewed, their agreement was going to be renewed. I don't know why they think these things. And this is part of the reason why they were so excited, because everything that they had been working on for the last 12 years since I did those assignments in the first place was finally going to come to fruition. This is why everybody on the internet is talking about Nasara Jasara. It's going to happen. It's finally happening. If you are watching Q, then you think that it's going to be the quantum leap has finally happened, blah, blah, blah. No, what happened is I jumped in here and said, oh, I think I'll do that.
Okay, so Kim now is in a position to guard over that. And she does explain that on the news a little bit more. Her intention is not to take over, nothing like what Artemis was doing, but we have to make sure that it is protected and guarded, not to control it. That is not the intent. Okay, so all of that we talked about on Monday. Now let's play a soundbite from Wednesday, because all these different orders are going out and it can be kind of confusing, and you're like, who's actually giving these orders? If the military is taking orders, who are they taking it from? And by the way, when we say military, we're not just talking about the U.S. military. This is military all over the world. So who's giving these orders? On what authority are they giving orders? Kim mentioned something on Monday about a person by the name of Angel Marcos. And what she found out, and this is the majority of what we talked about on Wednesday, is that he's actually in jail, prison, but he's part of a larger network. And this gets a little crazy. You'd be surprised on what the deep state is hanging their hat on and who they are accepting orders from. Essentially, there were 3 men that were ruling the world.
Angel Marcos guy that we showed you in the last news report is actually still in jail, but still operating.
Okay.
But it turns out he's part of a larger network of people. Now, in the past, there were 3, usually men, that were what you would call the ultimate head of the Order of the Black Sun. Okay. They were over predominantly the Eagles, and one of them played the role of the good guy, or a white, they call him the white person. Like, there's no real title for this guy. Okay. The other one was neutral. He was playing the role of balance, keeping things neutral. And then the other one would be considered the black person. Not physically in color, but he was to play the role of the dark. And the 3 of them would, in the past, try to maintain balance on the planet. Originally, they were 3 different covens, and they all reported to the same people we discussed earlier, yesterday. Sorry, Monday. Huh? What day is it? On Monday. Now, the 3 original gentlemen are gone. Okay. But originally 3 people came in and took their place. The one who played the role of the white had passed away, so the black gentleman decided to be both. And this guy, yes, I'm calling him Mr. Black, Mr. White, because there's no title for these coven people. Okay. So there were 3 people that came in and started to play the role of coven leaders. And these, they're now down to 2, and then as of this morning, they're now down to none. However, we found one of them hiding out under the central bank in Thailand, one of them hiding out in Jamaica, another one hiding out in Bhutan, and they had each had respectively, one of them was a clone, and then each one had 2 clones left. I know. Doppelgangers, whatever you want to call them. And they were playing the role of the 3 men who run the world.
Wow. They had that much authority, Kim?
No, but they play one on TV, if you're old enough to remember that one. I'm not really a doctor, but I play one on TV. Yeah, these people aren't really have any authority, but they play one. But the entire world was hanging on everything that these 2 men said.
Wow.
The entire world. Meaning the Pentagon, okay, on Monday, which was rather confusing, Monday afternoon, after we recorded the news, actually went to the Treasury and tried to issue Treasury notes based on the fact that they said they had an approval to do this. And they were all happy. They had gotten the approval apparently sometime over the weekend. And they tried to issue an enormous amount of Treasury notes against what they thought was these accounts. Okay. But as I had told you on Monday, I started working feverishly throughout the weekend and also on Monday and any remnants left on Tuesday to get rid of everything that was hanging there in Web 5. Mm-hmm. So turns out whatever they were planning on leveraging was against one of the things that I had taken out, so nothing actually worked. But this left everybody really confused because they thought that they were in charge. They're even reporting online that the military is now in charge of the financial system, quantum financial systems, all these types of things. And it was because one of these men gave them approval. Now, this particular man also held the title of Golden Eagle, which is why their approval came on a yellow paper. And he is also Chinese. I
Yellow
know.
Paper.
You cannot make this stuff up. I'm like, the whole world is listening to these people?
They're waiting for a yellow piece of paper.
So turns out what happened to Angel Marcos is once I had done the assignments way back in 2012, he eventually was forced into jail by these same people, and then they took over everything and told them, the whole world, that these assets were theirs.
Did they have any proof? Like they can just say stuff and people just believe them because of a title?
Yeah, and some rings and maybe some fancy jewelry and stuff and a suit. I don't know. I know. I need a Chinese man costume stat. Anybody is a costume maker listening to this report, I need to be an old Chinese man with some funky jewelry, because apparently that gets the job done every time. But the Pentagon was dependent on them, Treasury, everybody was dependent on them. But remember, this was something, if you had a higher clearance, you could actually see. It's just that nobody could touch it.
Okay.
And so this was the base root behind them claiming that they had control over everything, and that there was cryptocurrency involved and all kinds of things. So over the last couple of days, since we started the end of last week, making things disappear, over 40 banks in China have gone belly up.
Is that coming out in the media at all? Because I haven't seen anything.
Yes. We've got a video clip of that. Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So this is one of the banks, obviously.
This is the central bank, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously these are people that have accounts that want to get in, and they're not able to access anything. They just got cut off.
Well, these 40 smaller banks were absorbed into some larger banks, but there's a lot of people's accounts that didn't quite migrate over. There's there are database issues, and a lot of people in Hong Kong and in China are having a lot of difficulty accessing their money they had on deposit.
Wow.
China was in really deep in this situation due to the fact that they had created, or the deep state of China had created, their own fake Mei Hua, who took up residency in the Jade Temple in Shanghai. So fake Mei Hua was giving instructions to the fake generals, the Mr. Black, Mr. White, Mr. Neutral over there, and they created this worldwide scam based on assignments I did years ago.
Mm.
So because of the report that we put out on Monday, everybody's starting to figure out what's really happening. Okay. Now, even the fake Mei Hua and the fake generals had no idea I was the one that made the assignments until Monday. So by last night, these gentlemen, thank God, desperation leads to, well, in this case, death, but it actually leads for people to do desperate things and not really think when they do things, and panic sets in. So because these guys made all these promises to all these governments, this was even discussed at the G8. Oh, yes.
So when the operatives got together before the G8 really started.
Oh, yeah, a month, 2 months before. And all these countries were signing up. So far, we've received calls from Thailand. We've received calls from the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, a couple of different countries in Europe as to what the heck is going on. Because this was what was holding up the entire financial system of the world, in the promise that money from there was going to be released by the 15th of July.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dear. A whole lot of promises and a whole lot of no delivery. So when it all started disappearing, countries started panicking. We received panic calls from China overnight last night saying, we have gold, we have gold. I said, are you sure you do? No, you don't. Because that went as part of that OITC system. They had actually assigned gold, not assigned it as an ownership transfer, but had assigned gold to every country in the world as part of that system.
Wow.
From the assignments that I did and the depositories that I put there. I mean, I was so like, are you kidding me right now? But it all tied back to these few people. And technically, they're not even the original people. They are doppelgangers or clones or whatever you want to call them, playing the role.
So that was just for the humans. That was a front for the humans, right? Because if they really think that some aliens are going to, be fooled by someone in a mask or a doppelganger, clone, whatever, obviously that wouldn't happen. Right?
Well, I don't even think these people are aware of who is really behind them.
Oh.
The only thing they knew most recently is that they're now in trouble because they started receiving lots of phone calls as things disappeared. Yeah. Oh, it's just a glitch. Don't worry. We're going to take care of it. Now, there was a phone call that was placed last night to a person I know and speak to directly from one of these men that this person thought was the end-all be-all of the financial system of the world. Because people don't know, a lot of these operatives and stuff don't know.
Yeah.
And this happens to be someone I know directly. And this guy was actually involved in some of the trading of the off-ledger funds.
Okay.
Of course, the money couldn't come out yet. They'll have allocations when the Federal Reserve contract transfers over. Don't worry. We're taking it all over. Yeah, right. But this person, one of these guys that we're discussing, it was actually Mr. Black and White. Let's call him Mr. Black and White. Mr. Black and White called this person directly and tried to order this guy to call me and make me a ridiculous offer.
Why can't they just call you directly, this guy? Just not wanting to give you credibility?
Personally, they always have their people handle things. They don't, they keep this like guard of anonymity or something. It's like to show power or something. And actually, this person had never even spoken to this guy directly before, ever. He always had someone in between.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks that those someones in between are the ones that are in charge too. So it kind of keeps that anonymous thing going. Because remember, out of these people, two of them, out of the two that were left, I should say, out of these people, both of them had actually been declared legally dead.
It's such a strange world.
Oh, my God. Their whole world is crazy. They loved masked people. They loved doppelgangers. They loved, to keep the illusion alive of power. But this guy had no choice but to call anybody that he knew directly that would call me and get me to do a reassignment to them.
So that meeting that Kim was referring to did happen. She updated us on Friday about that. That was a phone call. And I was wondering why Kim was giving so much information about this call, because I was like, wow, they're going to try to intercept this call. They're going to try to do something. Why are we sharing so much information? But Kim is always ahead on this stuff. So she told us that in this conversation with this person, that she gave them some expired codes. And the whole purpose behind that was to see if this person that she was talking to or anyone else on the line, because no line is secure that they're using, is going to try to take these codes and do something with it, try to hack with it. And that's exactly what happened. So Kim was trying to determine who was on the call and what they would do with it. She said that the guy didn't seem to appear to use the codes, but there were other people who were trying to hack using those codes. And obviously they were expired codes. She's not going to give out codes that are legit. So that also gave her some additional information. So according to Kim, everybody wants something from her, right? They're hacking, they're trying to steal information from calls and things like that, but no one, it's like it hasn't clicked with them. Nobody wants to do anything to help humanity. They are in trouble. Banks are in trouble. They're waiting for funding to happen in some capacity or another, but no one's reaching out to Kim. Countries are in panic. Everyone is fighting to control the planet and also to control everyone else. So they're working on agreements with one another based on things that they think are going to happen, that have happened in the past, that aren't going to happen again, because those control systems are no longer viable. They no longer exist. But Kim did find something, basically remnants of beings that were here before that were controlling our planet are still able to operate in some capacity. And this has to do with their consciousness and the fact that it can exist in fragmented ways in various densities and planes of existence. So if you think about your body, and she explains this on the news, but if your body burst into 1,000 different pieces and went in all these different directions, obviously you would be harder to defeat than everything being together, right? And so what she has found, and this has nothing to do with the deep state that exists on this planet today and the humans that we are trying to inform and sometimes take out. This has to do with beings that were here previously and the technology that they had to fragment themselves and basically put themselves all over the multiverse and still control some computer systems and to give out crazy orders to people like the Q people, who apparently now have changed their clock and they're talking about a big sweep that's happening. So it's being done through this fragmented consciousness, which I found to be interesting. Frustrating, yes, especially for Kim, but also very interesting. So here is a soundbite of how these beings were doing this and their intention to be these fragmented pieces of consciousness. What were they trying to accomplish?
So this is more on a higher level of things, meaning, people that would be aware this was happening would be your SSP folks. You might see some global headquarters, barely, maybe some family members, some of those people kind of thing that might be vaguely aware of what happened. But clearly, these people think this is a positive thing. And I took a look. I guess the Q clock expired last night, and then it rolled back over for another 10 days. And now it basically tells us that it's going to do a full sweep. Incoming alert, incoming dimension shift. The sweep is coming. Now, either these people are one of two things based on what happened today. Either they are the most evil human beings that ever walked the planet, or the stupidest. And there's no in between for these people, because they somehow used to get information from somewhere that something was going to happen. Now, let's just say they're the stupidest people. When Marduk was around, I used to watch him answer the phone, and actually at one point physically in front of their face, watch him answer the phone for what I call those people. This would be your Order of the Black Sun folks, and this would be your Rothschild folks, and the families that you know the names of, and some of them you don't. These folks here would call, and they'd give them some line of whatever, and then hang up the phone. And they knew they were lying. They used to take bets amongst each other, for who was going to tell the most amount of lies and have the humans believe them. And so either these people are stupidest humans on the planet and still believe that line, or they are just pure evil. Either way, the best way I can explain this to you without causing a problem for us is some beings, as I had told you before, have the ability to make a consciousness transfer, meaning they can even split their consciousness into hundreds of little pieces and put it in any universe, anywhere, any dimension, any pocket of time, anywhere in the universe, and operate them all simultaneously. And I have been feverishly hunting down any of their consciousness that I can find anywhere. So it's almost like if somebody blew your body apart into 1,000 molecular pieces, and then each molecular piece went in a different direction somewhere in the universe, and yet you have a centralized operating system for all those pieces called your consciousness. So therefore, your legs could be walking on Mars, and maybe your head is, here on Earth, and maybe your arms are over there, but they all perform similar functions like you were still all one piece. And this is what these beings have the ability, not humans, but these beings have the ability to do. And they're granted that ability by, at one point in time, many years ago, by anti-source. So hunting down all these little molecular pieces of consciousness everywhere has been extremely painful, because even though you get one group of it, one bunch of it, one thing stuck in a computer system somewhere, it doesn't mean it's not operating from the 9th density of the 9th plane or the 8th plane of the lower astral somewhere, and there's just a speck of it and you've got to go find it. And it's very frustrating for me. But I'm sure this is like winning a war by attrition for these folks, because, they figure if they just keep us going and going and going, they'll wear us down eventually. But that's not the case. We're very resourceful on our side, and we keep fighting the good fight. But when that consciousness is still active, even if it's just one particle of that consciousness that's still active, it's still going to take the orders and instructions from the main consciousness party. And even though 99% of the particles are gone, that one particle will still activate something, which then tries to activate something like an extinction program on Earth, for example. And the rest of the people, if it's not the SSP that's running this Q thing, the rest of the people all thought, yay, money's coming. Money's not coming. You're all going to die today if nobody did anything, because some speck of consciousness is somewhere in the universe that you have to hunt down and find before everything erupts here on this planet. And sometimes, the frustration level gets really high, and sometimes it takes all day, and sometimes it takes all night. I can't stress to you enough that I can't give more information at this moment, because if they find it, if there is something out there, and if they manage to connect to something, what could they trip? Because they really don't understand what they're connecting to. Number two, it became apparent that there were a couple of communication posts left on this planet where they were getting standing order information through this consciousness somehow, some way. Those have been eliminated, at least the ones that I could find thus far. And hopefully this information will stop about these crazy quantum flips and whatever they're talking about on this Q clock, because they're basically talking about us all dying. I don't know if they know that. And quite frankly, they're stupid president or fake dead guy that they want to put in an office doesn't really mean a whole lot at this point if there's no American citizens and there's no citizens on the planet. What are you going to be running? I mean, what? There's nobody to follow you. There's no souls for you to leverage. There's no nothing for you to do at that point if we're all wiped out. But you clearly knew that there was going to be some kind of a sweep. Were you told by this computer system that they were just going to sweep bad guys away? No, it was everybody. Why do you believe anything that comes from a black screen made of black plasma with green plasma writing? Why do you believe this? I just don't get it. I mean, clearly it's black plasma. Now, black plasma would infer that you're reading something virtually on antimatter at this point, or dark matter as you call it, which means it comes from a dark place. And then you get on YouTube and wherever else you go and you start talking about God and Jesus and saying prayers for people. Get over yourselves, people. I mean, really, this is ridiculous.
It really does amaze me at how the deep state will follow these orders and think that they are somehow exempt. They were always fodder, just like the rest of us. But they think because they had some lineage or something that was going to save them. And that was never the case. So I hope that they listen. I hope they listen to our news. I hope they're listening to this podcast now. Because if you really think that you're a white hat and you want to do good things for our planet, then please take this to heart. Because the people and the things that you think you're doing, you're not. Your so-called leader, Trump, isn't even real. It's not even the real Trump. I don't even know what that thing is. So please, anyone that's following the Q movement or any of that, if you really do want to help humanity, please listen. Reach out. Quit following these crazy screens that lead to nowhere. All right. And I also love it when Kim just talks directly to the deep state because we know that they do listen. I'm just hoping the right people listen. Please, let's not go round and round in circles. Let's restore our planet. All right, so that wraps up today's episode. If you liked what you heard today, I encourage you guys to share this podcast with people you think about. You think about? Well, yeah, you think about them, but you also care about them. I was thinking about the next thing I was going to say, which is think critically. Just because we say something on this podcast or on our newscast or any other news source that you're watching or videos you're watching online doesn't make it real. Right? We are telling you the truth, but please do your own research. Don't just believe people because they have some platform that they're sharing information on. And we encourage you guys, if you aren't already a member, if you want to get this content right when it comes out, you can subscribe, become a member at unitednetwork.earth. It gives you on-demand access to all of our UNN newscasts, complete world situation reports and original series. And you can comment with us. Kim and I try to hop on the videos and answer questions. We also have an online community called United Chat that you can be part of. And we also encourage you to follow us on social media. If you go to our website, unitednetwork.earth, at the bottom, we have links to all of that. We also have a pretty cool social media team that creates clips and shares them online. So that's another way you can connect and help spread the word. Thanks for listening, guys. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.